Good morning, my name is Kirsty Dignam and I'm here to look at the energies for this week with today's Monday's Musings. I'm recording this video on Mother's Day and I feel myself torn between an energy of wanting to wait and a knowing that things are moving and an order to that's coming with a flow that encourages what needs to be shifted. When I first woke up this morning, one of the things I noticed, like us all, as a gift on Mother's Day was the fact that the clocks had gone forward, meaning we got less time in bed, but also we are adjusting to a calendar that isn't actually natural to us. I'm not going to get into the theories behind why the calendar has changed, but suffice to say, it has not only affected the hours that we are awake and the hours that we go to sleep on many levels, it has affected our own natural cycle and also removed a whole lunar episode from our calendar. So instead of 13 moons, there are now 12. Why is that important? And I can feel quite a forthright energy coming through in my voice, which also feels key this week. Why is that important? 13 is the number of the feminine. 13 is a very magical frequency. To diminish that is to remove those energies from our own awareness and our own flow, or at least with the aim of that. Now, again, I'm not going to get into the theories or conspiracies behind this, but I am doing this video to encourage people to feel into some of the cycles, some of the repetition, some of the flow that we may not have acknowledged. Why? A feeling of being rushed, particularly on Mother's Day, the day of the Creator, the day of giving birth to the life that we choose to create, but also our connection to the earth. Half the reason I feel rushed today as well, calendar aside, was the sheer fact I've been spending time doing things that I like, sharing posts that inspire me, or, taking time to journal, instead of doing this video, which I'm doing a day early, because tomorrow, on the Monday, I have things lined up. Now, whilst that brought to the surface the saying of not putting things off tomorrow what you can do today, there is an essence here of being aware of the future, bringing it into this present moment, but also looking at how that can impact our presence. Rather, our view of the impact on our presence. So, as I say earlier, I really enjoyed sharing the post and I enjoyed taking that time to get myself ready before allowing all of this energy to come through, which is the other aspect this week, integration. But to get myself ready to allow this energy to come through by doing human things, chop wood, carry water, going on social media, washing up, cleaning my home, really getting grounded into my body. That wasn't the issue. The issue was the duration afterwards. And then the feeling that came with having so much to do because I jumped ahead. And we can all fall into that trap this week if we don't take things at bite-sized chunks. We can be aware of the bigger picture, but not to forget the smaller steps in between that, not to forget the humanness within the divine. Sensing into that, of course, being on Mother's Day, there is a big, as we know collectively, a big shift, or do we know? That's the interesting thing, to look out for assumptions this week. But there is a big collective shift in the mother archetype. We talk about the feminine archetype, absolutely, but the mother archetype itself. I was speaking to my husband the other day, just reminiscing about the fact that we have the Virgin Mary on one hand and then we have Mary Magdalene on the other. And these are the two main female archetypes that are within our society that portray either the carrier, the maiden, or the mother. There's no in between. And at the same time, I was discussing with a friend the crone archetype. I'm not going to delve into that too much because what feels important this week is to give time. There's so much information coming through about the ancient feminine wisdom that is rising with Egypt, with pyramids, with Isis, with the earth herself, with the solar eclipse, with the new moon, with the Aries, the Neptune going into Aries, spirituality in itself, our whole view or perception, hence the glasses, is about to change and shift. There's no rush to figure it all out. In fact, trying to figure it all out is coming from a place of not trusting ourselves to hold the energy for this, which is the other thing I'm going to discuss in a moment. It is more important to find our own integral internal balance between holier than thou, mother, and, you know, the perceived more sexual connotations of the maiden, and how we may sell that, how we may use that to achieve what we want, our actions. As we go in further into the year, there is going to be a lot rising in regards to sexuality and femininity, and a lot of well, I'm hearing the word uprising, and that is going to move within us all. An example, yesterday I had a situation where I would normally be very placid and take things on the chin and not say anything and ignore the fact that it hurt in my body. And what was actually hurting in my body was the refusal to acknowledge this rage, this wound that was rising. I had two choices, or I believed I had two choices, right? The Mother Mary or Mary Magdalene. I could react, I could not buy into it, I could rebel against what was happening. And it's the dark and the light feminine, yeah? Or I could be very placid and very nurturing. Well, I chose neither. I chose neither. I found a middle ground. And that's the invitation this week, but particularly as we go into next year with it being all about change, the invitation is to find a middle ground. Whether that's stories that we've inherited, what we want to take forward, the different sides of us, the polarities, it really doesn't matter. What is our middle ground? What is our authentic truth? With all of these aspects occurring in the sky, with everything occurring around us, it is an invitation to stand in what is right for us. Now, authenticity isn't a new thing. The level of authenticity that's coming through for individuals will be, I'm holding my hands in a triangle, will be. This is about uniting the body, the mind, and the soul, but also the spirit. One of the things that came through to me the other day, okay, and it has been very mindful sharing what we understand from where we understand it, but also being very aware that there's so much more to come in, and there will be elements that we will never understand until that moment. So we can see the future as much as possible, but the actual gaining of it comes from experiencing the present moment. We know this. So one of the things that came through the other day, collectively, we are wanting to give more. It may not feel like it, or at least our bodies are wanting to give more. They have evolved. Collectively, we are wanting to give more. We are wanting to receive more. And what I actually saw was manna or milk from heaven trying to be received by our bodies and us fighting it. But what's happening collectively is an arc almost around the heart. Now, I don't want to get into this too much because I don't want the wisdom to take away the responsibility. And that's key this week. What we understand, how is that affecting what we apply to life? You know, it's one thing to know, it's another thing to do. There's an arc being redeveloped in the heart, including the higher heart. And when I leant into this, what I actually saw was the triangle on the chest of temperance in the tarot card. Now, in the tarot cards, now those that know the tarot cards, temperance is very much about the witness, very much about allowing the past and present to flow at a rate that brings back balance. Temperance is also androgynous, so it's not about the masculine or feminine, but about both. It's about the intuitive action, but the triangle was what was drawing my attention, not the circle on the third eye, which is also happening for a lot of people. Sight is really, really increasing, but it was more about the triangle held within the square on Temperance's chest, which is the fact that we are bound, we are rooted into this earth. To witness the relationship we have with that. How? Today's video is on Mother's Day. It is magnitude out there, the information, it is on another level, but bringing it back to the present moment. Today, this video is on Mother's Day. Why? What pressures are we putting on our ability to create? What judgments and views do we have on our wanting to be present with the moment? How do we see what we have created? Do we celebrate that? You know, a lot of cultures will, and us included in the UK with weddings and christenings and funerals, but a lot of cultures will celebrate rites of passage. I think we're getting better in the UK with red tents and things like that, stag parties, hen parties, all those kind of things, but recognizing the sacredness of what these celebrations are, including Mother's Day, recognizing the sacredness beyond the commercialism. That's on a far deeper level. Again, it's that Mother Mary or Mary Magdalene type energy. Now, I'm not linking into those archetypes saying they are particularly responsible for that, but are we totally disregarding it and coming from a place of such humility and humbleness that we don't understand our own worth and our own greatness? Or are we making money out of everything that's happening? Are we soliciting our soul, and at what cost? These rites of passage are an opportunity to celebrate where we have been in life and what we have experienced. And if we do not do this, we will carry on creating different things, the same thing and nothing different. So acknowledging with balance where you may not this week be celebrating what you have achieved and focusing instead on what you haven't. They're both sides of the same coin, right? But what one are you becoming more bound to? Is it what you haven't done or what you have done? It's like the energy this morning. Am I pushing against it, or am I, bringing forth what I can do in this present moment? Restoring that harmony. So I've actually put a few things down on my notepad because it was coming through that quickly, and that feels quite important this week and today. But this week, taking stock, small bite-sized chunks, journaling, writing down the ideas that are coming through. So I've talked about the clocks changing. I've talked about the 13 moons, and that is all I'm going to add on the 13 moons. I've talked about reclaiming our cycles and our flows and the ancient feminine wisdom that's rising, that's necessary for any change in how well we can receive the masculine. The other day, the energy that came through was really incredibly fearful. If I hadn't acknowledged where I was in that moment, if I hadn't witnessed myself, that would have been very, very destructive. If I hadn't been able to hold space for that masculine, my reactions wouldn't have had the beautiful, harmonious outcome that they did for so many, myself included. Acknowledging where we feel we're being rushed and not celebrating the creations that have happened and the impact that that has on what we choose to continue manifesting. If we don't see what we've done, we're just going to keep creating that. That's going to be exhausting. Yes, we can talk about the cycle outside not being the 13 moons anymore and being more man-made or conveyor belt type calendars. However, we've initiated ourselves into that as well. Allowing ourselves to pause and see what has occurred and witness ourselves in that process is the most efficient thing we can do, because we're not then recreating situations that are no longer needed. Recognizing where we can gain from bringing in that extra cycle, bringing in that extra moment of pause and reflection. It's going to be one of the most efficient things we can do this week. Not trusting the body. Now, the reason I share that is this morning, the last few days, hence the glasses, I've had a very twitchy right eye, which I know is all about how I see things and my actions. And I'll get into old wives' tales and things like that in a moment. But I had a twitchy right eye, and I've been having quite a migraine coming. And it's blocking, or I believed it's blocking my third eye, and my ear feels very, very full. And it's all linked to this heart energy. Now I see the halo, right? It's all linked to this energy. Oh, excuse me. Yes, of course, leading into Easter. I feel big, big shifts with both the feminine and the masculine all together at once. And I find it quite ironic that Easter lands on 420. Those in the cannabis world will know that it's linked to a day where the cannabis plant is celebrated. And all I can really feel into that is to chill, man. Just to chill, just allow things to happen with Easter. But I don't want to jump ahead too much. Back to this week. I naturally assumed that this was a block until I leant into the discomfort. And when I went into the discomfort, I was very aware that this is my body protecting myself and protecting me from others as well. Now, I'm not a big fan of talking about protection because I do believe that we're all quote unquote one, but also being very aware of energies that are being directed at me and how they're reflecting myself. When I tuned into this, it was multifaceted. On the one hand, I heard, the whole saying, left for love, right for spite. Yeah. So I felt into that, and I felt into the old wives' tales and the fact that they have roots in certain medicines, being aware of that this week, being aware of any superstitions or narratives that we've told ourselves, but not getting caught up in them themselves, but the roots behind it. There would have been some accuracy in that. Being very discerning with ourselves. I can get really quite easily think I need to fix, I need to heal, I need to shift. But actually, the truth is my body's also protecting me. And that's not a nice truth to be aware of, but it's still a truth. Acknowledging the essence of the messages that we're receiving this week is going to be key. So stepping back and not having the judgment on how we may feel about what we're receiving. The other aspect of that was to, first and foremost, acknowledge that my body was protecting me, which is an incredible thing, but also how much I was fighting that by believing it was blocked and that it needed to be fixed. This week, feeling into any stagnant energies you may have, any pains or aches, and instead of believing that's something you have to do to improve, really sensing into what is going on there. Maybe, just maybe, your body is doing exactly what it needs to do. Where has the trust, again, it's that being bound by the earthly plane, where has the lack of trust in our earthly plane been disintegrated? Particularly in the spiritual arena. Now, I share this again because Neptune today actually has gone into Aries instead of it being in Pisces for the last, I think, 14 years. So we're going to be aware of where our spirituality may not have been our actuality. That's going to include spiritual bypassing, but it's going to include a lack of balance as well with more spiritual things and not bringing our physical form into that. That's going to include the difference between the martyr and the sacrificial energy and the saint-like energy, and also the acknowledgement of where that may have strayed us from our path and, dare I say it, made things a little bit more difficult than they needed to be. This may not be a message that we want to hear, but until we're able to open up to what our body is trying to tell us, we're going to feel, I want to say disenfranchised, but it's disempowered with the very vessel that absorbs and receives these energies. The feminine, the physical body is the feminine. It is the creator. It is the mother of all our ideas, of all our inspiration. If we're disconnected, be that the earth, be that our own mothers, be that our body or our feminine, if we're disconnected to that intuition in physical embodiment, any actions that come through are not going to be able to hold the full potential of the masculine. This on the right side of my face is a reflection of energy I'm protecting myself against externally and internally, and that's the truth. And it isn't pleasant energy, and I need to be aware of that. Part of that energy is the sheer fact that I've been trying to fix it and fight it and unblock it. Being aware of that this week. Where are we fighting our body's wisdom? There is going to be, or potentially there has the potential to be quite a high rise in autoimmune conditions as a result of this. Acknowledging on the one hand, it is our body's way of integrating the higher energies. It is also a sign where we could do with taking more care of ourselves, but also on the other hand, where we may be fighting things that we don't want to hear in regards to the actions around us and the ones that we take as a result. It is about how well we stand up for ourselves now. Okay, so fixing what we believe to be blocks, rise in autoimmune concerns, if we continue to disconnect to the remembrance within us that is actually rising. Yes, it's linked to different places all over the world. Yes, it's linked to ancient energies, but it's also linked to the remembrance of ourselves that is rising. And that in itself can be what we're fighting. Some of the stuff that came through for me over the weekend was to do with the grandmother archetype, but not the grandmother elder archetype, or not that energy alone, but the grandmother, to be responsible on a wider scale for what we are nurturing, what we are feeding, the whole supply and demand system within us. and that we've inherited also. Taking a pause with that. Leaning into it. So watching out for sacrificial energy, which I've mentioned, that are based on how others not only see us, but a reflection back of how we see ourselves. Trusting old wives' tales and traditions, be that ceremonies, rites of passage, or stories. We're so quick to get rid of the stories, but at one point they would have had an essence of truth. They would have been rooted in our truth in that moment. Now, if we want to bring back parts of our soul that we may have bypassed or pushed to one side, particularly over the last 14 years, bringing back some of the element of that truth that is there. For the root of the stories told, being aware of the hidden narratives in our behaviors and our actions. What have I put here? Yes, I've talked about how people want to give more and receive more, even though it may not feel that way. And that's some of the pain that's rising, some of the anger that's rising, some of the rage that's rising. We can talk about it externally, but as the world becomes a harsher, harder place that is full of fear, so too do we. From that point, our actions are less, they flow less, they're not based in love as much as they would be. And yes, they have been triggered by external circumstances, but it is us that decides whether or not that affects our actions. I'm not saying allow the rage to be turned inwards, but to really lean into it and feel what is actually occurring for you. To look at what we're witnessing and how to recognize we are part of it, down to the finest of details. What I've put underneath here is gossip. Nipping energy in the bud now. We are going to see the rise of old energies, and it's going to be very tempting, as always, to, well, not as always, we may find it surprisingly tempting to feel validated in the stories that are rising, in the wisdom that is rising. An example, something that I went through over the last few days, I had people supporting me in a very wounded way, in the wounded way I would have been. And it was so tempting to lean back into that, to be validated. Yes, absolutely, this happened to me, da, 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 da. But I knew my responsibility was to nip that in the bud. Okay, so this week, really feeling into any of the weeds that may be trying to grow through some of the beauty that has been planted, and nipping it in the bud. That's our responsibility, to prune our own potential. Owning what is ours, but giving back what isn't. Again, essence. Okay, so this isn't something that we don't know, but it's going to take another level. The anger that we may feel if we don't do that is going to take another level, because it's, I wouldn't say we're running out of time, but there's a feeling of that collectively, that we're feeling pushed, that we're running out of time, that we need to keep things going quicker than what they were. It isn't about the time. It is about the voice now that is being whispered on such a deep cellular level. Yes, we can talk about the feminine voice. Yes, we can talk about Lemuria and Atlantis, but actually it's our energy now. We've stripped back so much over the last few years, and there's a new yet familiar wisdom trying to come through. The more we try and figure it out and not integrate it, the more we try and we're separating from it, the more we try and rush it, it's going to go backwards. If we procrastinate, yeah, that's going to get quite frustrating this week. Okay, so I've talked about Mother's Day, and that is an opportunity then to own what isn't ours. We haven't got the space anymore to take on board what isn't ours. We all have a responsibility to do our part, and that is that difference again between the sacrificial energy and the embodied feminine energy that says, actually, I'm not going to take this into my body, whether that's a news article, whether that's food that isn't good for us, whether that's relationships or stories or ways that things used to be. I'm not going to conceive with that. That's easy when it's difficult stuff. When it's stuff that's very familiar to us, yeah, it may get a bit wobbly this week. So really looking into that. Does it empower you? Honestly, does it help you to be your best self? Really? So the other thing that I put here is, I'm not sure where it's all going, but taking time to trust and integrate is pivotal. So how do we do that? Well, that's brought me really nicely to the whole point of this video, which is to look into the energies of the week. How do we take our time and integrate? We come back into the moment. We can be aware of all of this, but we come back into the moment. Chop wood, carry water. That's one of the essences of the Temperance card. We are bound by a physical body. We are bound by the earth. We are bound by a 3D life. We cannot avoid that, and we're not supposed to avoid that. It is about taking what we understand and applying it to life by witnessing the actions. You know, when you think of Temperance, shows the two cards, the past and the present, in two cups, sorry, the past and the present into the collective ocean beneath her. By witnessing what we are allowing to flow through us, what we are choosing to take forward, how we see our past, how we see our actions born from it, what cycles we are going to continue to stay in. And I've just ironically noticed the flow of Temperance being one of infinity, and being open to that, being open to new wisdom. We can really believe that we know what's going on, but all the time we do that, we limit what could potentially come through. Being open to our own wisdom, trying to be received this week in particular. We're leading up to April Fool's Day. It may not feel it, but things have the potential to get lighter. No, they are going to get lighter. Can we hold space for that? Are we willing to receive the ease and grace that could come from that? Okay, energies this week and how to best navigate them. That's where I feel like there's a rush. Tell me more. Help me to figure it out. Looking at why we want to figure things out, where that's coming from. Look at why we feel rushed. Looking at where feeling rushed can be the rush. We can get really addicted to that way of flow, to the more productive form of our own potential. Not acknowledging that when things aren't quite happening how we want them to happen, that's also an incredible stage of our own creativity. Instead, it's being seen as a repetitive, stagnant stage, and it's so important, so important. Relaxing down the shoulders. Energies this week and how to best navigate them. Oh yeah, of course. So we have the Queen of Cups, the Mother of Water at the bottom of the pack. That flow, holding up the cups, being ready to receive the flow. But unlike Temperance, she isn't actually part of it yet. Acknowledging that feminine wisdom that's coming up isn't actually part of the flow. It's being seen separate. Whether that's Atlantis, whether that's Lemuria, whether that's the feminine, whether that's creativity, whether that's Mother's Day or the earth, or all these aspects of the feminine, Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, they're all being seen as around us. There's an awareness there, but there isn't an integration. This week, that's the best thing we can do to help these energies expand, is to allow them to come within us and the physical experience of that. Don't downplay the holistic approach of humanity. There's a reason we're in a physical body. There's a lot of experience and wisdom to be gained. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Wow. Whew. Okay. So I say wow because 95% of the cards are or portray the masculine energy. It may feel as if it's about the feminine, but leading up into Easter, it is about how we react to the masculine. It is our actions here. Okay, so yes, I shared about Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene, but even I failed to realize it's about being the mother of the masculine and the lover of the masculine as well. It's about how we nurture the masculine, how we interact with the masculine, and what we create, what we conceive as a result. At the bottom of the pattern, we have Vision Quest just poking out, which is the Hanged Man, which is the Christ consciousness. But it's just poking out. It's not there yet. Okay, it's not there yet. We are not there yet. Recognizing that a big aspect of Christ consciousness or discovering our own light involves physical experiences, and it goes throughout our life. We reach our potential in every moment. We don't reach our fullest potential all in one go. It happens throughout life. There is time. There is time to bring back that 13th moon, to bring back that essence of patience and nurture and love and wisdom and infinity, timeless beauty of the physical experience. Overall, we have the balance card, but what I want to bring the attention to is the individual days, because the balance feels as if it's going to be going throughout the whole week. On the Monday, we have 8 of water, which is stagnation, which is also grief, which is also dirty dishes. Like washing the dirty dishes. Okay, recognizing the vessels that are broken, recognizing the ways of being that do not help us to be part of that flow. Yeah, when we look at the Queen of Cups, she has these cups here, but there is no flow in them. Why? Well, because they're broken. Looking at systems that are broken, looking at ways of being that are broken. Do you know, I just hid my nail. I hid my nail because underneath my nails, I have dirt from the cemetery, from tending to the land that holds the bones of my ancestors, and I hid them because they don't look good. No, this is nails that have been in the soil. This is the true grit of being in a place of grief, which is the 8 of Cups. This is my experience here, and it may not look perfected, but that in itself, the need for perfection, to look a certain way, to be a certain way, to come across a certain way, is what is actually breaking us. It's what is actually supporting this grief. And it isn't the grief that we think, it's the grief of our own authenticity that may have been lost. Come the Monday, that's really going to come to light. How willing are we to show our scars, our vulnerability, the depth that our hands have been in the soil, the work that we have done? How balanced is that? Is it all about that? Does it inspire us? Does it empower us? Or is it time to let go of systems that no longer work for us on the Monday? On the Tuesday, which is April Fool's Day, yes, of course, it's my anniversary. On the Tuesday, remembering what we are to celebrate, remembering what we do actually have, remember what we have collected, remember what we have gained. Keeping that balance is what's going to give us a more mature masculine energy now, because we have the Father of Water. Yes, he's aware of the ocean, he's aware of everything that's in there and all the potential, but he's concentrating on what he's carrying, and he's carrying only that he needs. Really pivotal moment this week to acknowledge what our needs are, honestly, emotionally. If we are to grow, to become more wise in our actions, what are we carrying? Do we need it all? Is it feeding us? I hear the phrase "teach a man to fish" on that card in particular, acknowledging what we no longer need to take forward for others on the Tuesday. Oh. On the Wednesday, we have the first major arcana during the week. Obviously, we have the balance card throughout, which is in this deck, Libra, but it would have been the original. No, in this deck, it's Libra, which is justice, but in other decks, it's actually strength. Don't get confused with the order of things. Say what's in front of you, see what's in front of you, feel what's in front of you. It doesn't really matter how other decks of the world, how other people portray something. What is in front of you? And on the Wednesday, I find it ironic that that's the day that I'm holding the Devil card. Okay, so come the Wednesday, looking at what may be holding us back by worrying about how other people see things, worrying about the right order to do things based on the narratives and perceptions of others, this video included. Okay, if you want the freedom, looking at where you may have tied yourself back by trying to be someone else. And just leaving it at that, particularly in our actions. I was sharing with my husband the other day I write posts all the time, I write blogs all the time, newsletters all the time, this video, daily guidance, and every aspect of work that has ever come to me hasn't come through any of them. And yet I spend a lot of time doing that because it's the done thing. That's how we sell our work. That's, again, it's that Mother Mary and that Mary Magdalene type energy. That is how things sell. This week, looking at what works for you, be honest with that. Don't compare to others. Figure out your own flow and release yourself from things that you are bound to that aren't yours. How feeling into the physical body for the light that that brings. Okay, how does it actually feel? On the Thursday, we have the Fool, or in this card, it is the Clown. It is the Heyoka. Is there a difference? I'm just looking. Okay. Acknowledging, is there a difference between the Fool or the Sacred Clown? Is there wisdom in the humor that we find in life? Is there healing to be had in the path that we choose to walk? Now, the reason I share this, two things that have been drawn to my attention is in this card in particular, there's a tear in the soil. There's a little white hole there in the ground. So not to be surprised on the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday if the whole ground doesn't shift. Now that could be your home, that could be things that you have relied on, that could be on a global scale. If we are to acknowledge the wisdom that comes from starting again, I'm hearing a dog outside bark, and I'm also being drawn to the dog on this card. Can't quite see it, just above the tear in the soil that is leaning up to what is being flapped about in front of it, being distracted. Yes, be mindful on Thursday that there's a lot of global messages coming through. So that's societal. The dog in the Fool card is society in itself, and it's being distracted. It's being having things be dangled in front of it, enticed even, acknowledging how the distractions and temptations of society are splitting our connection with the earth, splitting our connection with our body, splitting our connection with our path, particularly on the Thursday. And starting again, a lot of this energy with the new moon in Aries and the eclipse is all about starting again. We believed collectively that things would shift just with the eclipse. Of course not. This is going to go on for the next 6 months. So feeling into what happened on the eclipse as a beginning, as a seed. On the Friday, we have the Shaman, we have the Hierophant, and there's big confusion to go from the Fool to the Hierophant. It's like, how do we take forward these lessons, but also let them go? And that's the energy that we are facing midweek, or particularly to the end of the week, actually. It's going to come up midweek by looking at what is holding us back, but by the end of the week, it is acknowledging the lessons that we have refused to let go of and the impact that that's had on the new beginnings that are available. Thank you. Say what you see. Be connected with what you feel. Don't overthink it. Allow the wisdom to come through. And that's how we bridge the gap between the Fool and the Sacred Clown. Is there a difference? Yes, of course there's a difference. The Fool is very naive, and the Sacred Clown is still open to new beginnings, but has that wisdom of having walked paths very similar beforehand. On the Saturday, we have the Son of Water. So that initial maturity that was almost promised to us on the Tuesday, that initial offering of knowing that our needs are met, come the Saturday almost goes backwards. And it goes backwards for us to see the beauty in things, to recognize that our needs are met by our own reflection. Here we have the first card that is actually holding a cup, a bit like the Queen of Cups that I showed you at the beginning of the reading, but this is the masculine. The masculine holds one of the cups. If we are to acknowledge what is broken, we must make space for the masculine. We must make room for the necessary actions and not fear that ferocity. A lot of the emphasis on rage and things like that are very much that they're feminine qualities. The masculine is mad too. The divine masculine has the feminine within him, so anything that has suppressed that is going to stir him up as well, recognizing that's such a vital part of moving forward. Seeing the beauty of that, seeing the beauty of, yes, the feminine is holding space for the masculine, but the masculine is holding space for the feminine. There's no separation in the body. What is the one energy that brings them together? The body. The body feels, the body acts. The body is bound. We are bound to the physicality of life. That is how we unite the masculine and feminine. We come back to the one thing they both have in common, which is the body, the child of the earth, right? On the Sunday, we have judgment. We have spirit quest. This is where the real work lies. Spirituality is the body. This is where it all lies. There is no point connecting to the wisdom that is coming through. There is no point connecting to tarot cards or runes or guides if we do not understand the translation of our own body and where that is coming from. What judgments do we have on what we feel? What judgments do we have on what we're sensing and how we act and the result and who we are as a creator? Do we see ourselves as separate from everything that is being manifested? Are we a vital, recognized part of that? What can we do to ensure that we remember that on a daily basis? Not just connecting to our body, celebrating our body rather than berating and judging it. Overall, that's where we have the balance, and that's where we have that beautiful mergence, actually, where it doesn't matter whether the strength card is in the space of balance or whether it's Libra and justice. It really doesn't matter. The justice, the harmony comes from how well we connect physically to our own divine energy. That's the balance. Yeah, how well are we connecting to the transformations that have occurred? If we don't connect to them, how are we ever going to see what is possible? How restored do we feel? How centered and grounded do we feel? There is a shit ton of messages coming in, a huge amount. There are going to be changes from now until 2036, I reckon, that are going to make us look back and think, what on earth? Literally, what on earth happened? Positive and negative. Are we going to be the dog? Are we going to be distracted? Are we going to allow our own animal instincts to take over and not feel what is actually going on? Or are we going to be the fool and laugh and joke it off? Or are we going to be the sacred clown that says, I can feel this, I can sense this, I can see the humor, I know what I need to carry, I know where I need to be open, I'm aware of it all, but what am I going to do about it? Do I need to do anything about it? Coming continuously back to the body. Okay, so breaking it down, 41 minutes. Breaking it down, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 major arcanas. It is a week of the I don't even know why I'm laughing, and that may actually come up. You know, there's a fine line between joy and hysteria this week, but it is a week of the universe creating the chaos and the change that we need. It may not feel that way, but there are things that are totally out of our control. Can we allow that to happen, ourselves included? We have balance, we have the devil card, we have the fool card, the hierophant or the shaman, and the spirit guide. The only way we're going to restore harmony is by looking at what is holding us back, releasing them and allowing them to actually reconnect us to who we've always been, which is the religion. Okay, it is the indigenous, the innate wisdom that is within us, that is going to help us shift forward, to move forward, to rise above any judgments we may have had on ourselves and in turn each other? Or are we going to remain tied to trauma, to stories, to ways of being, to laugh it off, to placate it, to be distracted by easier ways and not feel into our body what is occurring, and therefore be dictated based on reflective views of ourselves? And what effect will that have on what we're carrying? What effect will that have on the balance and equilibrium that is available this week? There are 5. 5 is a turning point one way or another. Remember that. Whatever is occurring, it's a turning point one way or another. So I'm being drawn to look at the Mother of Water and then to actually realise All of the cards are in the suit of water. We have no other element here, no fire, no air, no earth here. It is all water. It is all emotions, intuition, the psyche. Underneath it, yes, of course, we have the vision quest. It is all about recognizing how connected we are to our subconscious, particularly our hidden subconscious. Are we separate from that? Are we, this is happening, that's happening outside, or are we really feeling what is going on within us as well? Are we holding the potential rather than becoming it? Or by acknowledging that, we can look at any areas that may be broken. We can look at any areas that may not be able to receive what is expected of us. I don't like to use the word expected, but that is what I'm getting. What is actually expected of us? One of the things that came up this week is one of the daily guidances that I did for myself was to recognize my age. But it was on a quite a deep level. I saw fossils, but to recognize my age and to recognize the judgments that I have of that. In society, we see the elder as somebody that is normally quite aged, right? Crumbling bones, a little bit loopy, not relevant, very stoic, very detached from the world. Recognizing the age that we're in, the elder is no longer a non-important part of our society. It's no longer a non-essential aspect of our own divinity. The elder is the pause, regardless of gender. The elder is the flow. The elder is what actually connects us. The elder is able to point out, this happened, this is what I gained, this is what I'm going to take forward. It is the bridge here. Without the elder, the more mature energy, and that doesn't mean serious. That doesn't mean all the connotations that we see in society of the elder. And I apologize, this isn't how I feel. It is what I see around me. So maybe to an element, to an aspect, it is how I feel. But the elder within us is what is actually going to bring forward the space needed for this energy to rise. Without that, we're never going to get that complete fullness. Without that being separate from that wise energy, we're always going to feel as if we're observing. We're always going to feel that sacrificial victim type energy where we have no control, or where, you know, people are speaking to us a certain way or treating us a certain way. If we feel as if we're being undermined this week, my question, my invitation is, by who? Truly. Looking at where systems may be broken in the view that we have of ourselves. If we are to, on the other hand, we have the Son and the Father of water. If we are to see the beauty of our own actions and own them, acknowledge them, embrace them, conceive with them, recognize that that's how we get what we need, acknowledging what we carry forward, whether we need it all, particularly our view of the masculine. This week, we are not separate from our actions. This is nothing that we don't know, but I don't mean from a karma perspective. I mean, we are not separate from our actions. Grow up. Okay, one card overall for the week. Take responsibility of the impact of things on our body. Take responsibility of the impact of things on our earth, on each other. Look at what narratives are continuing to play out and which ones you are buying into as well. Nip them in the bud. Have not ownership, but guardianship of your own path and what it is you are here to do, what it is that is expected of you. Yes. Okay, so we have Nine of Earth, which is accumulation, which is abundance and growth underneath it. Sun of Fire, which is a younger masculine energy that is bringing forth all these changes and creating with them by building the bow. When we acknowledge what we are responsible for, when we take credit, but also direction from what we are here to create, that helps us build the very basis of what is going to be delivered as a result. Underneath it, we have the Three of Cups, the Three of Water, fullness. The potential this week is to go from what was broken to what can now be held, not contained, but full and overflowing. The question is whether or not we can feel into the abundance of ourselves as creators, or see it as a responsibility that we may not want to take on board. See you next week. Take care.